what goes on media. This is Coming Out Stories. It's a podcast about one of the most important conversations of your life. I'm Emma Goswell. This is Ellen.
I kind of put it off, if I'm honest. I didn't come out at school when I was, right up until I was 16. It was a very gradual process with my friends. And then I guess you could say I've never really come out to my dad. Me and my dad have the kind of relationship where there's just topic of conversation. We just do not go there. Like, I would never ask him about his relationships, and he doesn't ask me about mine. So that's the understanding there. So, never spoken about anything like this with my dad. And then my mum, this is the most non-coming out story I think I've ever heard. And I know I'm so lucky because, people that I've spoken to who are gay, other people that I work with who are gay or LGBT, identified as LGBT, I know that other people have had such a tough time of it. And so mine was just such a gradual process of my first person I ever went out with was a girl, and we started seeing each other when I was 15. We were both in school. I was in the year above, she was in the year below. We started hanging out and then kissing, and then it kind of developed from there. And she was hanging around at my house a lot, and I was going around to hers a lot. And how this happened is that we were kind of making out in my bedroom, and it got a bit hot and heavy.
Right.
and so we were both quite flushed, and it came to the point where her mum was going to come pick her up.
Right.
And I walked past my mum in the corridor, and what was the conversation? She said something like, "Oh, is it time for you to go home now? Okay, lovely to see you." And halfway through what she was saying, she looked at both of us and went, "Oh," she kind of clocked. We could see it on her face, clock. And we're just like, "Yeah, okay," head down, ran out to meet my girlfriend's mum. And yeah, so that was that. And then I think my mum assumed that I was gay because me and my girlfriend saw each other for a year.
But there were no conversations.
The type of relationship that I have with my parents is so middle class, stiff upper lip kind of, don't talk about it. But then paradoxically, my mum is a really accepting kind of person. So there was no big conversation. And I feel like I was quite lucky in getting out of that because I'm, quite a private person, and that's the kind of thing that I don't really want to be talking about with my parents anyway. And my mum just accepted it and was perfect about it right from the beginning.
So it's the case that she knows, but you don't talk about it.
Yeah, she's met other girlfriends since as well, And I think at first she assumed that I was a lesbian, and then I had a boyfriend for it was only about 3 months. I was sort of seeing him, and she found out about him. And so I think at that point, again, it was just kind of everything's been worked on assumptions. There's never really been any conversation. She's never come to a Pride event with me. I'd love it if she did. But no, and I feel like I've cheated the system a little bit. When I hear about other people and their coming out stories was, either so embarrassing or so awkward or, really awful consequences, there's me. I just kind of, I was a bit flushed. She was like, "Oh."
But you said you actually had your first girlfriend at school, so did you never consider telling other people at school?
I didn't. I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to stick out. I didn't even know what it meant. I didn't know anyone else. There was no role models. I don't even think I knew what it meant myself. But I knew it was very natural to me. This is how I feel. But no, I didn't want to identify and put my head above the parapet at school because that would have singled me out as different, and I didn't know anyone else that I could have.
So when you were questioning your sexuality, did you think straight away, "Oh, I'm definitely bisexual," or was it confusing to you?
No, I've never been confused. I never remember a feeling of being confused. It's just something I never questioned. First, I fancied, there was a boy in New Kids on the Block that I quite fancied, but he was quite effeminate, right? And then when my girlfriend came along, it was so natural to me that I never questioned it, just went with it. And by then, I knew at 15 well, I like boys and I like girls. I could have a relationship with either. And felt very natural within me. But outwardly, it was something I just did not want to share with friends at school because I didn't want to be different. And that's such a coward's way out, I know. And gradually they found out over the years.
Do you think it's easier to come out as bisexual or gay or no difference?
Oh, goodness. That's such a tough question. I think it's probably harder to come out as gay because parents perhaps think, oh, well, that means I can't, I'm not going to have grandchildren. Whereas I guess being bisexual, there's still half a chance. Even though I don't really fancy having children myself, I don't think it's for me. At least, I think if I had actually been a lesbian, I think my mum would have probably talked to me about it at some point in a, does this mean I don't get grandchildren kind of a way.
But do you think there are many bisexual role models? Because there seems to be less. They seem to be quite underrepresented, don't they?
And to be honest, it's still underrepresented because I don't feel... this is going to be quite controversial, but I really question some pop stars out there who have sort of emerged onto the scene and used that label. I'm not sure if they use it as a way to sell records or to be quirky and a little bit different and identify differently to other pop stars. And I don't suppose I want to name anyone, but there are some out there that have gone, oh, yes, I was bi, but now I've just decided I'm going to just date boys. So it's really, really tough for bisexual people because it's almost as if they can make that choice, And I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think, just as you're born gay or trans or whatever, however you identify, I don't think you can just switch off and go, I'm not going to fancy girls anymore, I'm not going to fancy boys anymore.
A long time ago, when I was at university, we used to have the Lesbian and Gay Society, and I had to fight to get it changed to Lesbian and Gay and Bisexual Society. I'm sure now it will be LGBT. Yeah. But do you feel like the B part of the LGBT is a sort of afterthought? It is something that's sort of forgotten part of the community.
Been. I think it's getting better now.
Do you feel part of the community?
I do. I like attending prides. It's very much a part of me. It's always going to be a part of me. I feel very strongly about it. And I feel very strongly that people should be able to identify as they want to identify and, and not suffer any consequences because of that in day-to-day life. It just seems ridiculous to me.
So have you got any role models?
Bisexual role models. They just, to me... there are just not enough out there. The trouble with being bisexual is the type of things that I hear are, and I've heard these from people who identify themselves as gay, have said to me things like, I understand what it's about. Yeah, no, I understand bisexual. You just really love sex. And I'm like, probably no more than you. Or there's a connotation that bisexual people are more sexual, they get about, or you're a bit slaggy. And
I've heard the phrase greedy used before
greedy.
In terms of bisexuals. What is that about?
It just really upsets me, things like that, because that's such a misunderstanding of the fact that all it is that I might have a relationship with a woman or a man. I'm not greedy. I'm not, it would annoy me if people said that about polyamorous people. But to say that about bisexual people, it really grinds my gears.
Well, that's it, 'cause if you're in a relationship, you're going to be with that one person.
Exactly.
But do you feel like there is quite a lot of biphobia out there then?
I think it's getting better. And I think that... I think a lot of strides have been taken forward in the last, even the last 10 years. And I think there's still a lot to be done. I would love to see a bisexual person properly represented in a mainstream soap like EastEnders or Emmerdale.
Oh yeah, they don't seem to go for that, do they?
They never have, and why not? We're just as valid, and it would be just as valuable. Definitely it would have been for me as a young person growing up, just to have that confirmation. Maybe had I had that, I would have invested in coming out at school, telling more friends, and having a support network instead of just sort of, bumbling along on my own for a long while. Yeah, it's really important. I can't overemphasize that enough. And a friend of mine, actually, Joe Lycett, who's a comedian, I absolutely love what he does. He does something that even I don't feel like it. He gets up on a stage most nights and he says, yes, I'm bisexual. And, it's guys like him who are busting myths and busting misunderstandings about bisexuality just by being his own fabulous self and saying, yeah, sometimes I get with men, sometimes, I like getting with women. And he's doing a lot for me, for our community, I think, at the moment.
So there is at least one role model out there.
There is. Oh, there's...
Joe Lycett.
Yeah. And also, I have a friend of mine who is a blogger who's, trying to sort of push the bisexual message as well. And he's doing quite a lot in the community as well. But, there should be more of us. Definitely should be more.
OK, if there's anyone listening then that might be thinking, I might identify as bisexual rather than LG, L or a G, what would you say to them to advise them?
I think if you're questioning or you think you might be bisexual, and say you're a little bit younger or you're in a situation that puts you in a vulnerable sort of situation, I would say find somebody that you can talk to, whether that's on a helpline, whether that's at a meeting group, an LGBT society, and try and find an ally. I wished I'd worked harder to find an ally, to speak to somebody about it a lot earlier. And I think that's really important. And then from there, they should give you the courage to, come out and speak to other people about it and take yourself forward. I think that's really important. Don't ever feel alone and don't ever feel like you're different.
Massive thank you to Ellen for sharing her story with us. Please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. We'd also love to hear from you on Twitter. You can find us there at Come Out Stories. I'm Emma Goswell. And Coming Out Stories is a What Goes On Media production. Coming up next, it's Matt Cain.
I grew up in a time when, it was a particularly difficult time to be gay because it was the HIV/AIDS crisis. So we were portrayed as dangerous, disease-carrying sexual predators who couldn't be trusted around children. And a lot of the taunts in the school playground reflected that.